Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. I am Paul Sisler, your host for In the Moment. Welcome back. I know it has been a while. I took a short hiatus. I wrote a book, and I'm in the editing process, so I've almost completed it. We're almost there. But as far as my show, I am back and I am bringing some new shows, some new hosts, some revamping of some of our older shows. So there's going to be a little bit of change. I'm excited. So this is going to be a great segment that I have here, Becoming Stoic. I'm going to introduce you to the new host of it, Benny, the Stoic Padawan. Hello, Benny. How are you doing?
Hey, Paul, I'm very well, and I'm excited to be here. To kick off your new season, if you will, and to be the first, the first one to help you out with. But how are you doing?
I am
Excited for it?
awesome. I am awesome. I am loving every aspect of this. I am just so excited. So, Benny, tell me a little bit about yourself. What brought you into Stoicism?
Yeah, I think that's one of those first questions that we always get, right? And first, I'm from a small town in the Netherlands, and after all my travels and all the things, trials and tribulations, at one point you kind of ask yourself all the deep questions, right? And at one point, I diagnosed myself with kind of an existential crisis. And my good friend of mine, he was kind of my book guru, who used to tell me all of the great books to read. And a lot of them you can see in the background were recommendations by him. And he told me read this book on like introduction into existentialism. And I started reading it. He had all these different philosophies, and maybe people who are watching this, they recognize it. If they can familiarize themselves with that. Once you read certain things, you just kind of feel like it's you, right? So when I started, going over the Stoics, and I was like, this is me. So that's when I just felt like I had to read more of them. And you start with the Norse, as you're going to mention them, Marcus Aurelius, all of them. And I started reading, and the more I went into it, I was like, this is me. And I felt like I need to learn more to kind of get more in control of myself. So yeah, I think a lot of people show similar journeys, different kind of triggers. But for me, it was, asking yourself those questions like, what am I doing? What is the purpose? What do I need to do? And why am I getting affected by all of these things so much? But the Stoics, they have very clear and concise answers to it. And for me personally, Epictetus is one who rings, closest to my heart from all of them. But I will probably get deeper into that over the next few weeks, months, and yeah, let's see. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent, excellent. So am I. So am I. I'm excited about this. Okay, if you notice at the bottom, I have Benny's Twitter X. It's now X. I have his ad on there along with his website. And briefly here, I'm going to bring up his website for everyone to take a look at. The Stoic Padawan. Please check it out. It's very interesting, and he's got some quotes on here and some views. There's a subscribe button. You can get subscribe to him and receive things in your email from him. But yes, please check out his website. A lot of valuable lessons, a lot of valuable information in here. Get down to there. There we go. All right. And then subscribe. There we are. So check out his website. Benny, yes. Oh my God. He's also on Twitter Spaces. I believe it's Wednesdays and Saturdays. And you will find Benny and Bryce, the Stoic Bryce, that they host spaces and have some real good teachings on there also. And I believe you guys are covering Seneca and Bryce's space right now.
Yeah, so we did Marcus Aurelius and Meditations for about 50 odd weeks, and then we did Epictetus, the Enchiridion, his manual, for about, I think, 11 or 12 weeks, maybe a little bit more. And now we're doing letters from a Stoic, from Seneca. So not some of his essays, but we're doing the letters that he wrote to Lucilius. Yeah, and it's definitely, those are one of the journeys that really helped me get deeper into it, because you do it line for line, and you're out there, and Bryce, and he has a good, knowledge about it, so you get to, You have to think a little bit more. And I think that that is the best thing about philosophy, right? Just in general, just to kind of explore and discover new things. And once you read new things, you're just like, oh wow, this is adds so much more. So no, the space has definitely added something to my journey, and same with this company. I love talking about this. So it's yeah.
Yes, I do too. A lot of people, I think there's a lot of the values that they find in Stoicism, and when they start learning about it, they realize that, oh my God, I've been living that all of my life. I've been living that aspect all of my life. There's a lot of good things that people, that they're already living aspects of Stoicism without even knowing what Stoicism is. And I know in some of the spaces I've gone into and some people that have asked me questions about Stoicism, they have this belief that Stoics just don't have any emotions. They are these drones of people that they don't love, they don't hate, they don't get frustrated, they have no ambitions, they're just boring people without emotions, and nothing affects them, which is a complete fallacy. Stoics are usually emotional people, and part of the teachings of Stoicism is to teach you to how to rein in your emotions so that when you are struck by emotion, you don't react according to that emotion. You rein it in and you sit back and you think about what you're going to say, do, how you're going to respond to something. So it's a teaching mechanism on how to restrain those emotions. And it's not that you're going to eliminate them or no longer use them. I mean, when you're like in a public forum, you might want to hold back the tears and stuff. If it's a situation where you really want to cry, you're really sad, and you want to just cuddle up in a ball and just not be seen or heard. Yet, the Stoic aspect is going to hold that back, and you're going to continue doing what you're doing. And then when you get home, you can curl up in that ball and cry and just do what you need to do. So, what?
All right.
Oh, go ahead. What's your view on that aspect of it?
Yeah, I think that that is a really interesting, point to kind of get out there, and it's one when you say like, a lot of people that recognize themselves as being a stoic, which I had as well. But the issue that I didn't do at the beginning was to kind of get in touch with my emotions, right? I just kind of pushed them away or maybe let them affect me too much inside and not outside. People, some of my friends used to call me kind of a robot or whatever, but I was inside you were struggling. So what Stoicism really taught me is to get into it, right? To not shy away from it. So that we come to those virtues, to have the courage to examine it. And as you rightly said, you have moments where it's difficult, where you are struggling, and that's when you need to decide what is the best course of action, right? Is it now time for my tears, or is it now time for some, actions? And if we talk, for example, about a funeral or, when someone passed away, those who left behind need to take, certain steps. And that's something that we hear, right? Oh, this person took off the reins and, organized everything. That doesn't mean that they're not hurting. It means that they are saying, okay, this is what I've got to do right now. And then I can have my moment of grief, which is natural, right? And Seneca says the same, but it's always have to do with moderation. We have to make sure that it's moderate and that it's at the right time. And so for me, again, when we talk about that journey, I do recognize a lot of the Stoic teachings, but they help me, get closer to myself. So yeah, you're right. There's so many misconceptions out there on Stoicism, and that it's something, especially in the masculinity scene, where it's, oh, if you want to be a real man, you've got to be Stoic. You've got to put all your feelings aside and, for example, use your anger to go train. No, you've got to make sure that you know what they are, where they're coming from, so you can act out of reason and logic, but not putting your feelings aside. I think it is a very important topic to talk about when according to Stoicism, when we talk about Stoicism.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm gonna put in there real quick and all that. I do have my phone sitting here, and I have the Twitter live going in the background here. So for those that are watching on Twitter, if you have a question, go ahead and post it on there. And if I can, I'll try to read it and bring it up and all that. So, when it comes to Stoicism, what is it? I know there's going to be a lot of people that that are just tuning in that may not even know what Stoicism is. So, without breaking out, Merriam-Webster and all that, could you enlighten our people as to what Stoicism is and and kind of give an explanation of the virtues of Stoicism?
Yeah, that's a good question. And for me, Stoicism is a way of life. It's a philosophy of life. It's a philosophy that should be practiced, right? You can see it in the text, especially Epictetus. They always say you can read as much as you want, but it's part of you need to put it into practice, into life, so you can make a distinction between the sophists and the philosophers who actually live it. So we can talk about it as much as we want, but we at the end of the day we need to put it into practice. So for me, it's a lived philosophy. I try to apply it to my life, and what is it? It's basically trying to find a way to deal with all the obstacles, everything that comes your way, even the good things, the bad ways, the bad things, and to deal with it in a peaceful way. That's pretty much the crux of philosophy, is to find the way to live your life in a peaceful way. And how we do that is to live virtuous, right? And they say, okay, if you live well, if you live virtuous, there's nothing to worry about. Why should your mind be troubled, right? But if you do the wrong things, then you're going to find yourself worrying at the middle of the night, right? If you don't act just, because the four virtues, we have wisdom, we have justice, courage, and temperance. And if you don't have them all in line, then you're not going to find a peaceful life. And for example, for me, one of the main things is temperance that I worked on. And everybody has their virtue that they have a little bit more work on, right? We have wisdom, which is a more general thing that everybody, we need to gain knowledge, but also put it into practice, right? That's the wisdom. It's not just accumulating knowledge, but knowing what to do with it. And then for some it's more justice, for some it's more courageous, and then for others it's more temperance. But we need to find a way to put them together and to live a peaceful life, right? I think that is one of the ways. And there's many, and we will, go through all of the different steps of how to do it, how to put it into practice. But that's pretty much philosophy, right? It's a
Right.
lived philosophy to live a peaceful life. I don't know. What is your take on philosophy itself, or Stoicism?
For me, Stoicism, I mean, whoops, there we go. We lost Benny for a second. He's back. I'll answer that in a second. Bryce put up when we were talking about the emotions, which brings up temperance, one of the keys that you were talking about, one of the virtues. Stoicism is about controlling our emotions and not being a slave to them, expressing them and leveraging them to our best advantage. Emotions are good, they're part of our nature. Temperance is the key. And for me, Stoicism is about overall not wasting energy. Okay. Um, when we are confronted with obstacles, stress, bills, we have things that are within our control and things that are outside of our control. And if we worry about the things outside of our control, we are wasting energy. We have to utilize wisdom to know that this is going on. There's absolutely nothing I can do about it. So I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to focus on the things that I can control, that I do have an influence on. And when you start utilizing the wisdom aspect, I believe that justice is going to fall in line because you're going to look at things rationally. Courage, it's going to give you the confidence to step forward. And temperance, you're going to be able to keep yourself in control and utilize all of these talents and gifts and skills and knowledges that you have to be the best part of you that you can be. And people that are stoic aren't the ones that are usually out there running at the gums, throwing misinformation out there and different aspects of that They're not out there looking for attention. They're not out there needing, needing to be seen. They're out there trying to share their experiences, and they're listening. I just ran them across the front and all that. We have two ears and one mouth. Okay, which means we should listen more than we speak. And I believe that was Seneca, right? Um,
Zeno.
Zeno, that's right, that's right. Um, we need to observe when we go into this. Shadow Fox on the Flow talks about this, and this is more about we need to step into the position of observer. And when you step into the position of observer, you learn a lot because you listen to other people and you can see their perspectives, see the way they think, how they think, why they think the way they do, and you learn from that. You gain knowledge. But if you're overstepping them, over talking them, running them over, and telling them how you think it should be, you you've built a wall up that disallows you to grow. So for me, Stoicism is about growth, and it's about control, and it's about not wasting energy. So that's what Stoicism is for me, and I try to live that every day of my life, every moment of my life. And granted, none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. What the best lessons are is that when we catch ourselves doing it, that we say, "Hey, I am doing this, and this isn't a good thing. I need to change this." And I think that's what makes you more powerful as self.
Yeah, and I think it's that's a really good way of putting it, right? To kind of conserve energy, and because that's where you find a peace. If you're at peace, you're not spending any extra energy, and that observer part is really interesting as well. And I would like to add to it that it should also be the observer of yourself. So we can kind of distance ourselves from our own actions and our own reactions to things and look at it more objectively. So I like that observer way to see, okay, what am I doing? What are my actions without adding some kind of ego label to it or without adding some kind of emotional side to it. And what I think in line with not spending too much energy, it's kind of that what we can see from the Stoics. They say to live in accordance with nature, right? To find your way of not just your own nature, but the nature in itself. And when that all of that comes together, that's where you find that peace, and that's where you kind of spend the energy that you need, right? That you do the actions that are necessary. And I think you know being that observer will also teach you so much more about yourself. And I think it's a big concept, right? To say to live in accordance with your nature or with nature. And then you ask, oh, what is my nature? Okay, well, there's a way to find out by living, right? By doing the things that you do and then observing them, reflecting on them, adding introspection, and asking yourself, where did I spend that excess energy? Where did I spend? When was I worrying? Where would I feel friction? And you can kind of recalibrate your life that way. And the more you do that, the more you um, feel you're getting in sync with what you're doing. And sometimes we need to make difficult decisions to do that, right? And that's when you have courage. And we have to be fair to ourselves to make sure that we do make those right decisions, and not just for others, but for ourselves as well, which is a difficult thing sometimes. But no, I like that, to add that the observer, but not just to the rest of you around you, because I also feel that the world around us is a mirror, right? And that's from the Bruce Lee's book, Be Water, My Friend. He touches on that a lot, and he says, everything around us that happens is a mirror of who I am, right? Because we see life through our lens, and all of it reflects information back to ourselves. So the observer part is a really important one to kind of put it into practice as a cognitive element in the world.
Yes, absolutely. And another aspect of observer, one of the things that you'll find me referencing a lot when I come into the spaces, it's something that I picked up from Shadow Fox. Again, there's Shadow Fox always in there, but it's something that I've always done. And when she put it into words to describe exactly what it was, it resonated with me. It clicked. It's just like, wow, oh my. And that is the difference between serving self and being self-serving. Because when you're self-serving, you're doing things to benefit you, and you're not going to care who you hurt in the process, and that doesn't make a better you. Okay. Whereas when you're serving self, you're doing things for the higher good, the greater good, because you're making sure that you are the best you that you can be. You're serving self. You're making sure that you're the healthiest you, the smartest you, the strongest you, the most receptive you. Okay. And in doing so, that is going to make a good, kind, loving you that's going to help everybody else, because now you get to share that with everybody else. So for me, it's about serving the higher purpose. And if you're serving self, you're serving the higher purpose, versus if you're self-serving, you're not serving self. You're just you're greedy. You want things for you because it makes you feel good, and it's because that's what you want. That goes into lust and desire. And not that I'm a religious person, but that drives you to the 7 deadly sins, So there's where a lot of that difference comes in for me, Now, one of the things I did when I did our opening and all that, I put up there basically the four, I guess, the four fathers of Stoicism, you might want to say. Would you tell us a little bit more about each one of those? Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, and Zeno of Citium.
Yeah, so I'll start with Zeno because he's the founder of Stoicism. So he was way back. I think it was somewhere 300 something BC. So he was all the way back there, and he pretty much became a philosopher. Like there's different stories where he was shipwrecked and landed into Greece, and he found some philosophy books. But there's also stories where his father actually gave him philosophy books to study already. But nevertheless, he came into Greece and he found. He was like, oh, I want to study with some philosophers, and crates of thieves happened to walk around, and he was a cynic. So Zeno started following him, and that's kind of where he started his teaching, right? So he started out with the cynics, he went with the Megarians, more of the Aristotle school, the academics. So he kind of mishmashed all of these things, and he looked at different schools and different kitchens. And then at one point he's like, no, I know what the right thing is, right? He believed with the cynics where they said, the virtue is all good. And we can read that in Antisthenes, who started with the cynics. He said, virtue is the strongest weapon we have, and it's for everyone. He even in Diogenes the Artist, he said, when people say, oh, this is only for men, no, even in those books back in the day, this is for everyone, right? So Zeno said, okay, it's the virtues, but that's very, we also have the human side. So he added the preferred and differences to it, and he just made it a little bit softer, more general for the public. And he said, okay, let's bring this back to the streets. So he went to Athens to the Stoa Poikile, which is like a covered archway where people would walk, and it's just a normal kind of street. And kind of in Socrates fashion, he would bring it back. And first they called them the Zenonians, and then after a while they said, okay, no, they're in the Stoa all the time, they're the Stoics. So he kind of started it out. He didn't, I'm not sure, there's nothing survived that he written down, but he written some books. But then we had Cleanthes, who followed him in the Stoic school as the leader, and then we have Chrysippus, who was also a massive figure. Nothing survived, but he wrote over 700 books. But he is said to be kind of the real founder, like to give Stoicism the direction that it has. So we went, and then we go through like the ages from Zeno, who had the famous quote that you said, we have 2 ears, 1 mind, we should listen more and speak less. And we can see from Chrysippus, and like what Zeno did, he divided it into 3 parts. We have logic, we have ethics, and we have physics. So logic is how we speak, dialectic. Then we have the ethics is the moral stance, how we need to live, and all, and then we have the physics, how the universe works, the logos. That's what, the big thing in Stoics, where that's wherever the rational universe, right? If we talk about God, they say, okay, because they thought in Epictetus we hear about Zeus and all these things, but God for the Stoics was a rational universe. That's why we are given as humans a little part of it, which is the reason and logic, right? We have the human side, the emotions, but then we have the divine part, the reason and logic. So then we cross forward, and then we go first to Seneca. Seneca is an interesting figure, and as we've been doing it in the spaces with Bryce, we get to learn more of him. He was from quite a wealthy family in what's now Cordoba, Spain, and his father. And there's actually interesting links from his older brother was in the New Testament, and he supposedly met with Saint Paul. I think it's Gallio. I'm not sure from the top of my head, but. And Seneca's younger brother's son was a famous poet. Some of his works survived. But Seneca was up there, right? He was a high politician, not as high as Marcus Aurelius. He wasn't the emperor, but he was dealing with the emperors, right? He had a couple of altercations first with Caligula, one of those famous names that we hear around.
Yeah.
Caligula wanted to have him dead because he was accused. He accused him of some kind of conspiracy against him. But then he got saved by some of the clerks by, Caligula said, don't worry, Seneca has already ill health. He's probably going to die soon anyway. So they left him alone. Then Claudius, the successor of Caligula, wanted to have him get rid of, so they exiled him to Corsica. And then the mother of Nero, another infamous emperor, called him back to become tutor of Nero. And at the end of his life, it was actually his former student who asked him, or not asked him, who ordered him to commit suicide. But in the meantime, he wrote a lot of interesting texts. Most of the texts that are survived, that are actually written by someone themselves, is from Seneca. We have a lot of essays, we have a lot of plays, a lot of the letters from a Stoic, as you mentioned earlier, that we're doing in the space on X now. So there's a lot of, and the great thing about Seneca is that he has a great prose, right? He's more of an orator. He's a storyteller. He wrote plays, so you can read it, right? And it was kind of controversial that whether he actually lived the philosophy, because he was such a wealthy person and because he was all the way up there, and people kind of criticized him for that.
Right.
And then we go to, so it's an interesting figure to read, like to go and ask yourself, was he really mentioning, and how was he really honest about this, or is he kind of redeeming himself for those texts? So that's quite interesting to read. And then we go to Epictetus, who was after Seneca. They kind of crossed timelines because Epictetus was during the time of Nero. Epictetus was actually a slave by a freedman of Nero himself, and one high up there as well. So he was born a slave, and he was, body-wise, he was limp on one leg apparently, and he during his slavery he was actually brought to Musonius Rufus, which is another big name in Stoicism, and Rufus became his teacher of the Stoic, because back in the day the slaves, some of them got to study Stoic philosophy, others other parts. So it wasn't that they didn't get to do things, but when the owner said, okay, you're intelligent, you can study this to teach me. So that's when he started to teach and learn Stoicism from Rufus. And then when Nero died, he became a freedman, and he started his own philosophy school, his own Stoic school, first in Rome, and then he was exiled to Nicopolis, which is now Greece. So that's where he went and he lived his life. And for me, Epictetus is the one who makes most sense to me, speaks most to me, because he's quite direct. You can see the difference between Seneca, Epictetus, and later Marcus Aurelius in the writing. And one interesting thing is that Epictetus never wrote anything himself. So the only thing that we know of him is by one of his students, Arrian. He wrote the discourses, he wrote a manual, like an Enchiridion and handbook, which a lot of the people used to carry around, with some short, mantras, if you will, just to remind themselves of the teachings. So that's interesting. We can read that. And then we go to the emperor, right? And again, the timelines kind of cross over. I think it was around when Marcus Aurelius was around 12 or in his early teens when Epictetus passed away. So they never met. But he did get to receive the books from Arrian by one of his teachers. The Stoic teachers was Junius Rusticus. They used to, because he was up high at the consul somewhere in Rome, and Arrian was up there as well, consul, and at least high in the echelons of Roman politics. And he probably had the book, right? And all the chapters, all the books, because we have 5 now, 5, and there used to be a little bit more. But then we have Marcus Aurelius, and he's probably the most famous of the Stoics, and as Bryce used to call him in the spaces, he's the ringleader, right? He's the front man of the band. because we can see his thoughts, right? And we can see exactly what he was thinking. And he was carried like, and this is the interesting.
Whoop.
Yeah, what power does is Seneca, he feels like he kind of moved with the power while Marcus Aurelius was really restraining himself. And I think that that's what you mentioned at the beginning as well, where it's, Stoicism is about helping you deal with the things that you suffer the most with. And in meditation, we can see that Marcus Aurelius was struggling with anger, right, with all of these kind of impulses. So you can read it all in his meditations, like, okay, don't be angry with this. You're going to deal with these people, deal with them in the right way. They're also people, and you can see that all through the meditation. So, yeah, those are pretty much the famous kind of people of Stoicism from back in the day. And maybe we can add our chapter to it now, right?
There we go. There we go. What I really love about Marcus Aurelius is that this was his journal. This was never meant to be published. It was never meant to be read by you and I today. That's not what the intent was. This was him reflecting upon what he was dealing with. And I think that's what makes his teachings probably, in my opinion, one of the most valuable teachings. Um, my recommendation would be for people to start with Marcus Aurelius and really just dig into his teachings. And then I would say then go to Zeno next, because then you understand where Marcus Aurelius gets everything. You know, if you then go back to Zeno and then Seneca and Epictetus and a few of the others that you had mentioned and all that, I I think that's where you'll see what made how Stoicism made Marcus Aurelius the man that he was. You know, and when you look at it in that aspect, it's just like, okay, here is this brilliant man that's fighting with these things within himself, his own inner demons, and he's utilizing logic, critical thinking, um, his virtues, his morals, his own ethics, and everything about that. And then you go back and you start at the beginning, and it's just like, this is what built this man's character. This is why he ended up being who he was. Without the others, we wouldn't have known Marcus Aurelius. And then, if you really want to understand Stoicism, you also need to go back to the great philosophers and all that. You need to go back to Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. You need to go back and you need to look at their writings. And then, if you want to have another influence and interpretation, you need to go to the modern and postmodern philosophers. And that's why I like the first 7 episodes that I did was on Rene Descartes. And it's not so, Rene Descartes' not a Stoic, okay? But he brings forth thoughts that opens your mind to thinking. It's a great aspect to critical thinking. And when you look at what all of these great people wrote during their times, their eras, whether you agree with what they say or not, doesn't play a relevancy. What does is that you take the time to read where they're coming from. And that is what is going to allow you to look at things, hopefully, in a new way, a new light, so that you can become the Stoic, the philosopher, because we're all philosophers, because
Mm-hmm.
we all have a thought process of how we think things should be. And we have that philosophy of people should live like this or people should live like that. You know, when you start applying some of these virtues about love and kindness, and energy, and how you focus your thoughts, that allows you to grow as an individual. And again, it brings it back to the growth aspect. It allows you to grow. If you don't take in what these wise people have said, then you're just allowing yourself that growth. You're only using what we have here today that you see on MSNBC or Netflix or whatever it is that you're watching or paying attention to, the upbringing of your parents and relatives, the interactions that you had in school. You're creating your own impressions on life. And for me, when you go back and you read these other people that lived in other times and experienced different things in different ways and how they responded to them, it brings something to me today on how I want to live and how I want to be and how I think others should be treated. So that's kind of where I see the importance of philosophy and stoicism in the world today. And I don't think enough people take the time to appreciate that or delve into it. I think we would have a better world if everybody did.
Yeah, I fully agree, and the interesting thing is that even when you read those texts, which are like 2000 years old, we can still see the same human nature coming back, right? People wanting stuff, people wanting to go like climb up the political or whatever ladder, you see the same kind of behaviors coming back. So people say, oh, this is outdated. No, if you really look, and that's the nice thing about philosophy, it doesn't deal with anything, specific to one time. It deals with life, and even though the details are different, and we can read that in Marcus Aurelius cycles, they come back, right? We have our cycle of life, we grow older and we go through our older age, and then we have the cycle of ages. He refers to empires and emperors, all been gone. And who thought that the Roman Empire was going to disappear, right? Not in this heyday. The Romans didn't think that. And now, what do we think? We think that this is going to stay this way. Who knows? No, how long? But at one point, it's going to disappear. So that's the beauty of philosophy, and I think that that's why everybody should apply it, because it has that element of critical thinking, of looking at yourself and really examining life. And I agree, with the way you should start with reading. And I created kind of a reading list. If I had to start again, I had like Marcus Aurelius, and there's a good book, a commentary book on that by Donald Robertson, How to Think Like a Roman Emperor. And then I'd go to Epictetus, and then there's Massimo Pigliucci has kind of a discourse with Epictetus in his book. And then you have Seneca and How to Live a Good Life by Will Irvine. That's kind of my go-to kind of list. If people ask me, like, how do I start? And one of the reasons that you said as well, once you get the background of Marcus Aurelius, you can see the struggle, right? You can feel the personal kind of element that he adds. And as you said, it wasn't meant for publication. Right? Not like Seneca, he wrote for publication. That was pretty much what he did. Epictetus, he didn't write. Arrian wrote it for himself, right? And he thought about publicizing it probably. But Marcus Aurelius didn't. This was his personal diary, right? This is like going into the thoughts of a philosopher king, right? The closest thing to Plato's philosopher king that we probably might have in, the history of humanity. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but at least something close to that, right? And it shows you that he was struggling still with these things. It's not like you live this life and it's gonna be rosy. No, it's gonna be tough. But at one point, you learn to kind of welcome the obstacles, right? To say, okay, I'm studying this, and that's kind of you need to read and you need to study these things, but more importantly, you need to apply it, right? And I think at one point, then you can welcome the struggle, and you can say, okay, I'm teaching, I'm learning about all of this, bring it on. I want to test myself. And obviously, you don't want to call all the bad things on you, but when they happen, you can kind of give that little twist as like, okay, this is my moment to study, right? This is my moment to apply what I've been studying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And here's the thing, when you look back at the great philosophers and Stoics, and you look back at, especially like Marcus Aurelius and all that, you look at the struggles that they faced, and here it is 1,000 years, 2,000 years later, and we're still facing these same struggles. Have we not learned? Have we not passed these things on? No, they've been passed on, but we aren't learning these things because we're not being taught these things. And if we were taught these things, these are values that we would pass down. And if we pass these values down, maybe we could eventually get beyond that. But nowhere in our history have we decided that we could do that, keep those teachings going, excuse me, at a young age. Bryce put a statement up there. Epictetus was the person that Aurelius referred to the most and was key in his philosophical development. Side note, Junius Rusticus was probably Aurelius's most important teacher. Probably so. Probably so. And then we have Ariel. Hello, Ariel. Hi. Thank you for joining us. Um, so, um, when before we started the show, I talked about the Pythagoreans, because they're a huge influence on me. I remember it was probably back in about seventh or eighth grade when we were learning about the Pythagorean theorem, and I had asked the teacher why is it named that, and this was a historical brilliant teacher of mathematics, and it was in junior high school that I started learning about the Pythagoreans, and for me that was mind blowing. That was eye opening, because the Pythagoreans believe that everything can be explained with numbers. Now, I don't necessarily agree holistically, but at that time, with my mind, I was mathematics. That was my thing, and it's just like, wow, the world can be explained with numbers. And I kind of delve more into it, and then there's a lot of aspects about them that are kind of cultish and stuff like that. Their cleansing processes probably not a good thing, especially in today's world. Not that it's not a bad idea to maybe no, I won't go there. But when you take a look at a lot of these things and think about it in junior high school, 13, 14 years old, and I'm being influenced by Pythagoras, and his teachings, which led me into other readings, which again, until I got into high school, I didn't delve into, a lot of these other philosophers and stuff. And then even after that, when I went back to college in 2008, some of the first classes that I had to take were philosophy, because I love philosophy. I love learning about, how people in the past viewed things and thought about things. So when you start bringing this to the forefront of today, I think these readings and these teachings are just so important. And it's one of the problems that we have in the educational system. I mean, when you look at the division in the world today, and I'm not taking this political, I'm bringing up an observation, I feel if more people would have been taught the philosophies of people like Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics and the Pythagoreans and Socrates and stuff like that, starting in elementary school, junior high school, I believe that we would have a much more loving, kinder world, and a more innovative world, and a more productive world. I think we would be further along. We're just now coming up with AI to this, exponential, possibilities of self-learning computers and machines and cars and stuff like that. I think we would have got there much faster if this would have always been part of our teachings. What do you think about that?
Oh, I definitely agree. And I was thinking the more you were talking about that, that you mentioned the serving self, right? Because a lot of it is we are putting everything out there, right? We are looking at all the things that people are doing wrong, that others are mistaken, but we fail to look at ourselves. And I think for me, one of the things that philosophy teaches you is to take responsibility for your own actions and to make sure that you understand yourself the most, right? It's the Oracle in Delphi said, know thyself, right? And if we look at Socrates and from all the philosophies, that's where it starts. But in education, and I agree, and even in society, we are not supposed to do that, right? We are kind of being taught like, oh no, you need to have all these skills to give to the outside, right? To be productive, to add something to society, which we should, but probably not in the best way that we probably want to do, or maybe not even applying our skills to their best use. And then we can, as you said, then we can become more innovative, then we can become, a better society and grow faster if everybody uses their best skills productively. And I think for me, when we talk about philosophy, you want to become the best version of yourself. And um, a lot of the time that's seen as selfish, right? Where people nowadays make decisions to kind of step out of the work zone and find themselves and do the things that they feel that they must do, or make decisions where you don't have that social life, where you feel like, no, I've got to make these decisions. For example, when I stopped drinking alcohol, a lot of the people say, hey, why are you doing this? Are you not, a part of us anymore? No, I'm doing this to become a better person. This is for me. If I don't make these decisions, then I'm going to suffer. And if I suffer, then everybody's going to be less off because I'm not contributing what I should. And I'm not saying that I'm this pivotal point in society, no, but I am a part. And that's something that we can read in the Stoics, and they say, we are all part of the universe, and more that we are all a pivotal part in the universe. However big, however small, we are there, right? And we should assume our role in the best way. So I agree. If we all manage to live a little bit more according to philosophy, and this doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be Stoicism per se. You mentioned the Pythagoreans. There's other people who have, a different philosophy, Buddhism, and even religion, right? As long as you apply it for the right reason, and as long as you do it for yourself to begin with, and for society at large. And I think that is the main point. But for me, it starts with taking responsibility for your own life, and that's something that I feel that we are passing on to others, making excuses, looking at how other people live and pointing the fingers, judging them. Well, we should be judging ourselves first to see how am I living. So yeah, I agree that if we apply this more to life, then we can grow so much faster than we normally would have.
Yes, yes. Just imagine. I want you to look like, let's take any job that you've ever worked. It's based upon either totalitarianism or authoritarianism. I mean, really think about it. Okay, you have the owner or the boss. Here are the rules. You don't listen, you're out the door. We're not going to have any of that. Very, very totalitarian, authoritarian. You got to be here at this time, and you're only getting this much for what you're going to do. And you need to increase what you're going to do if you want to get more. If it were done in a Stoic fashion, imagine how much more productive business would be. Productivity. People would look forward to doing things to the betterment of society. Now, I know there's people in the background. Paul, you're talking about communism. Well, there are good forms of communism, and there's good forms of capitalism. There's good forms of socialism, but there's also bad forms. Okay? And if you're applying Stoicism, you probably get closer to the good forms, if you really wanted to, if you wanted to. And the problem is that people don't want to. They want to be self-serving instead of serving self. And I want to bring Stoicism to the political realm. Because if I could get politicians to start thinking in more of a Stoic aspect, they would no longer be politicians, but they would actually be people representing the people they were elected into office to represent. Because now they would be doing better for the people instead of doing better for self. Okay, so I want to truly bring Stoicism into the political realm, which is my forte. So that's how I want to do it. Your thoughts?
No, I agree. And the interesting thing is that if we apply Stoicism in this case, and again we look back at the virtues, right? So we have to examine every event that is happening, and we should then apply the virtues to it to make the moral, just decision. If you talk about politicians, a lot of these things would be different, right? And I'm from the Netherlands, so we don't have that strong divide between communism and socialism and capitalism, and we probably have kind of maybe not towards communism, but socialism and capitalism, maybe a different view to it and maybe a different take. But
Yes.
if we all do the morally just thing, it would be different, and then we have that self-serving part more of the serving self more, right? And for me, like I'm not very into politics. I love following the election cycles in the US because it's a big show, right? It's not as in the Netherlands or other places. It's a little bit boring, but in the US, there's some action there. But for me, it's to help people at least empower themselves by looking at these teachings, by even not becoming a Stoic per se, but at least getting a few little bits to help them improve their life. And I've seen that, with the community starting to grow, and even if people don't adhere to it completely, there are still things that they say, hey, this can help me. And for me, that's kind of how I think that conversations like these are really important to have. That people listen to it and they say, okay, Stoicism isn't just this rigid form of, becoming an emotionless creature. No, it's to enhance your life, empower your life, and to grow as a person, again, for the rest of society around us.
Exactly. Exactly. Ariel, revolutionary thinking. We shouldn't always be looking to judge and criticize. We should be looking to help and guide. Absolutely. Absolutely. My friend T-Paw from the Vellum popped in and said, hello. Hello, T-Paw. Thank you for joining us.
So,
Bryce threw in another comment. Stoicism is practical and pragmatic. It's a philosophy of endurance, of self accountability, and action. It offers a life purpose to all. Do the best you can with whatever you have and do it virtuously. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. All right. I think this first episode with you and I went extremely well. What do you think?
yeah, me too. Again, I love talking about this topic, and I also like that it's, we come from different angles, so it makes my view on these things, talk about the same thing, but from a different input, which is always good. It's always enriching to hear different, to make your mind think a little bit better. And again, that's one of these things, just to kind of bring it back, where people are not common to accept other views, right? And our views aren't that different, but it's different, right? So that is for me another part where you have to kind of accept if people don't agree with you, right? That happens. Great, listen to them, find if there's some truth to it. Even if they insult you, hey, maybe there's some truth, right? Maybe my hair looks funny. Okay, let's look in the mirror, right, and see what it looks like. So I think that is a key thing to kind of. Oh, I agree. Yeah, I enjoyed this conversation a lot. It's good, and I can't wait. What's the next and the next week and the following weeks. See what we're going to talk about.
Definitely, definitely. T-Paw, this podcast and the knowledge you guys have dispersed has been a game changer in various aspects of my own life. Thank you. I appreciate that. We try to put out goodwill on every aspect of this podcast. Again, I have multiple shows. Um, for those of you that are here, if it's your first time, if you like what you're seeing, please click like and subscribe to my podcast. That's going to help me out in the algorithm and be able to bring more people in to enjoy this knowledge that we were trying to bring to the people and share. Um, I also have more shows throughout the week. Wednesday, we have Shadow Fox and the Flow, and Jackie is going to be our guest on there. On Thursday, I have a new show called Who Wrote the Bill, and that's going to be with Nick Nunnally and Jack Cunningham. We'll probably see more of Nick than we do Jack. Jack is actually out canvassing for helping promote a candidate for office that he believes in. I commend him for that. He's getting out there and doing what he believes in. It's a wonderful thing. Friday, T-Paw. He's the host of the Vellum. And then We talk about writing and stuff like that. And then Saturday, we have Jeremy Baker with democratic philosophy. So join us and all that. Throughout the week, I got a lot of different flavor for what you might be looking for. So hopefully we can, bring something for you. All of my shows are at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Saturday. I do have a show on Tuesday. We're still setting up on bringing that back with L.R. Evans. Busy schedule. Sometimes people need to take some time off and handle things in their own life and get things done. I took 3 months. Come on. Okay. So sometimes, depending upon what goes on, sometimes people need to have some time. So thank you again, Benny. Excellent show. People that would like to hear us talk about other things, on the bottom, you'll see across the banner, there's Benny's Twitter, X at. DM him. Let him know if there's something that you'd like to hear us talk about on the show. If you look up at my name, I have my Twitter account, X account up there at Paul J. Sisler II. DM me if there's a topic you would like us to talk about in relation to Stoicism. Let us know. We will definitely try to bring other people's thoughts and questions into context. And maybe you never know, somebody might want to know more about love and dating or something, and we might do a whole show on love and dating and Stoicism and how it applies. So I mean, there's a lot of avenues to look at. You just got to be open to it. That's all we ask. And again, I'm not telling you have to do anything in any way, shape, or form, but sometimes it's good to step back and be the observer. Benny, any closing thoughts?
That was pretty well rounded out there. I liked how you mentioned that. And again, as well, if anyone has any topics, we can look at anything through the Stoic lens, right? And that's the great thing about philosophy. You can apply it to every aspect of life. So yeah, as you said, if anyone has some topic, something that they're struggling with, they want us to examine through a Stoic lens, yeah, bring it on. And I'm very grateful that you have me on here, and this opportunity is amazing for me, and I love talking about philosophy and Stoicism in general. So yeah, I appreciate that, and I'm happy to be part of it. So can't wait to see what's going to happen over the next few weeks and months. I'm looking forward to it, Paul. And thanks.
It's gonna be fun. I love it. This is a great show. Very energizing and very renewing for me. Thank you, Benny. Don't take off and all that. Stay here while we close out. Again, everybody, we will be here again next Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Feel free to join us. And remember, be kind, be happy, and may good things come your way. Thank you.